Number 8. Twin burglars. We've all heard of stories where one twin commits a crime and then accuses the other, right? Or maybe that's TV. But anyways, it's more so when they have the same gender and are a perfect match with identical physical characteristics. In 2009, twin brothers Hassan and Abbas O and one other man were involved in a jewelry heist in Germany. The three men robbed a luxury boutique and made off with watches and jewels worth over $5 million. The men were seen by security cameras. One of them also left a glove behind. Police then extracted DNA samples from the glove, and it led to the twin brothers Hassan and Abbas. But investigators couldn't determine which brother had committed the heist, or whether both brothers were involved. Neither of them confessed, and the CCTV footage proved to be useless because all the men were wearing masks. Police had no choice but to free both brothers, even though the jewelry remained missing. The brothers then thanked the state for allowing them to be freed, after it could not establish the exact identity of the criminal. Number 7. Daniel and David DeWild. In July 2003, Heather DeWild disappeared after going to see her estranged husband, Dan DeWild. She had gone to his house to pick up a set of insurance cards for their 2 kids and sign a check. Heather's parents got worried when she didn't come back. They called Dan, who told them that Heather left the kids with him and went shopping, but the parents found that very suspicious. When questioned, Dan was told by his twin brother, David, not to answer the detective's questions. Investigators started to believe this was not a missing persons case at all, but rather foul play. However, no murder weapon was found, no fingerprints, and no blood in the house where police believed she was killed. Nothing tied the brothers to Heather's murder, even though they were both viewed as suspects. 6 weeks after she disappeared, Heather's body was found on a road by a construction worker. Eventually, the case grew cold, and Heather's parents felt they would never get closure as to what happened to their daughter. But 2 years later, a new district attorney was elected, and they went to him for help. He and his team started going through all the information that had been gathered on the case, and what they found blew the minds of everyone involved. Prosecutors learned that before Heather went missing, the twin DeWild brothers had been watching a lot of forensic shows and crime TV. They had started plotting the crime when Heather filed for divorce. Later, David turned on his twin brother, revealing that Dan was the one that killed Heather, even filming a reenactment of the crime. Dan DeWild was eventually convicted and sentenced to 74 years. David took a plea deal in return for his testimony and received 12 years for second-degree murder. Number 6. Sabina and Ursula. Okay, try to keep up with this one. Ursula and Sabina Eriksson, twin Swedish sisters, lived a simple life with their families. They had no previous record of mental illness or criminal activity. Then, one day, Ursula flew from the United States to Ireland to see her sister. What followed was a flurry of brutality and shared lunacy, resulting in a chain of road accidents, a murder, and a few baffled officers. In 2008, once in Ireland, the twins took a bus to London for reasons unknown, but they were kicked off the bus right in the middle of the highway for acting like a bunch of hooligans. So, they started to walk in the middle of the road, carefree and not at all bothered by the vehicles honking and speeding by them. They then came upon some cops that were being videotaped for a BBC program. Every bit of the crazy moment that followed was filmed by the cameras. The twins were apprehended by authorities and were calm until Ursula suddenly rushed across the highway and ran into a truck's wheels. After this, Sabina did the exact same thing, only a few moments later, and was hit by a vehicle. The poor officers didn't even have any time to respond. This was, however, still not the end of the story. Sabina stood up and attacked the cops regardless of the fact that a car had just hit her. 6 people were needed to hold her down. Ursula was enraged as well, and probably would have done the same if she hadn't just broken her legs. Sabina cooled down after that and acted so calm that the officers let her go the following day. This turned out to be a catastrophic mistake. She went on to kill a guy who offered her a place to stay and then jumped off a 40-foot bridge hours later. She managed to escape once again. She was later handed a 5-year sentence for the murder. But why only 5 years? Because her attorneys had several issues establishing whether she was psychotic or not, and if yes, to what extent. Which makes us wonder if Sabina was the one that was insane. Why did Ursula leap on the highway? There was no trace of alcohol or drugs in either of their systems. According to experts, one of the twins struggled from a sort of temporary insanity, while the other was infected by her sister's craziness. The relationship was so deep that when one of them lost her mind, the other did as well. They've both been pronounced sane since then, but are they really? Number 5. The Silent Twins. June and Jennifer Gibbons, known as the Silent Twins, spoke only with their immediate family members. The twins didn't have the best social life and were bullied regularly at school. Kids made fun of them for having speech impediments. To cope with being mistreated and misunderstood, the twins made up their own secret language, and as time went by, it became more unique and less intelligible to outsiders. They also developed other peculiarities, such as refusing to communicate with anyone outside of their family and refusing to read or write in school, and mirroring each other's actions almost perfectly. A therapist said the girls may gain some type of normalcy if they were separated, so their parents sent them to different boarding schools. The hope was that once they were on their own and able to develop a sense of self, the girls would break out of their shells and start to communicate with the wider world. The experiment was a huge failure. Instead of branching out, they withdrew themselves even more. Upon being reunited, the twins held each other even tighter. They chose to no longer speak to their parents, except for communicating by writing letters. The Gibbon sisters grew up and turned to a life of crime, committing acts of arson and petty theft. They were both sent to jail and were also diagnosed with schizophrenia. According to Marjorie Wallace's 1986 nonfiction book, The Silent Twins, the sisters had an intense love-hate relationship and eventually made a very serious pact. One had to die so the other could live a normal life. It only made sense to them. Jennifer even admitted to Wallace during a visit, "I'm going to die. We've decided." And in 1993, just hours after their release, Jennifer, at the age of 29, died on her sister's shoulder from a sudden inflammation of the heart muscle. The cause remains a mystery to this day. Do you think something like this is even possible? Is twin magic real? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 4. Robert and Stephen SPAHowski. Among the identical twins, Stephen was the one who initiated a dedicated life to crime. In 1971, he stabbed Ronald Ripley, a bar owner in Elmira Heights, New York, 47 times. He was convicted of manslaughter at the age of 17 and spent the following 38 years in jail. His twin, Robert, followed in his brother's bloody footsteps. He bludgeoned and strangled at least 4 people between 1990 and 2005. In November 2005, he stepped into a police precinct and admitted to all of his crimes. 54-year-old Vivian Irizarry was his most recent victim, and her corpse was still in his basement. He was sentenced to 100 years in jail after being guilty of 4 counts of second-degree deliberate murder and an additional count of felony murder while executing a robbery. "I thought I was the only murderer in the family," Stephen stated after being notified of his brother's deeds at Attica Correctional Facility, where he had been serving time for his own punishment. There is a theory which talks about twin behaviors in psychology. Apparently, one sibling idolizes another, and it is possible that they aspire to copy each other's behavior. Only in this case, it results in a cascade of murderous crimes. Robert's stint with drug addiction revealed intrinsic genetic imprinting linked to his aggression. Impulsive behavior and thrill-seeking have a very heritable component, and these qualities raise the likelihood of crime and violence within society. Number 3. Jazz and Taz Whitehead. In April 2011, 48-year-old twin brothers Edwin and Edward Burnt were charged with felony murder after police discovered their mother's body in their Houston home. Her body was covered in bugs. A neighbor reportedly told authorities she hadn't seen their mom, Sybil Burnt, in months, and when police got to the house, it was in deplorable condition and smelled terribly, with flies everywhere. 88-year-old Sybil was found lying face down on the floor. The Suns told investigators they were watching the NCAA football championship game on January 10th when she walked into the room, slipped, and fell. They said they just left her on the floor and that she was conscious and talking for 3 full days until she died. They didn't have money to take her to the hospital, and they didn't want to get in trouble, so they didn't let anyone know what happened. According to police, after this, the twins continued life as normal, simply stepping over their mother's body. According to their defense attorney, the twins, one of whom has a form of autism called Asperger's syndrome, and the other, being so mentally disabled that he really isn't functional, shouldn't have been arrested in the first place. The murder charges were then dropped. Number 2. Darrin and Damien Fernandez. In 2001, police arrested Darrin Fernandez in a Boston neighborhood. He had broken into a home in Dorchester. The woman, whose house he had broken into, woke up to the sound of glass shattering and called the police. Police arrived minutes later to find Darrin trying to flee the scene. He had injured himself while breaking the window. Police ran Darrin's DNA through the database and discovered that it matched 2 sexual assault crimes committed in the area. In both instances, a man had broken into a lady's home while she slept and raped her. The investigation soon took a turn when police realized that Darrin had a twin brother named Damien, who could have been the one who committed one or both acts instead of Darrin. Police were able to convict Darrin for the first assault because the victim was able to describe a tattoo on his arm. The second case remained inconclusive. At the first trial, investigators tried to pin the rape on him by claiming that he had been in the same area around the time it happened, but it was unsuccessful because they couldn't actually prove that Damien had not been in the area. During the second trial, Assistant District Attorney Mary Kelly took the jury to a Dorchester home where Darrin had been hired as a painter. There, she showed them how Darrin had climbed a ladder to scout the neighborhood and find out his next victim. Although this made sense to some of the jurors, not all of them agreed, and he couldn't be charged with a second assault. Darrin was again tried for the third time in 2006, and this time, authorities were able to show evidence in which he had committed 4 break-ins in the same area across 1 year. One of his victims, who hadn't testified in the previous 2 cases, came forward to reveal strong connections between her attack and this one. Darrin Fernandez was later convicted to serve 15 to 20 years in prison after one jury found him guilty 5 years after his original arrest, in addition to the 10 to 15 years he had already served for the first attack. And number 1, Ronald and Donald Anderson. In July of 2008, Jenny Coleman was shot and killed at a train station, and whoever did it also stole her car. Police later recovered the abandoned vehicle and found a cigarette butt inside. DNA from the cigarette butt led them to Donald Smith, who had previously been sent to prison for a different crime. Donald denied shooting Coleman and said that the murderer was actually his twin brother, Ronald. To confirm this, Donald asked investigators to show his relatives the security footage of the killer. Investigators did, and Donald's relatives confirmed that it was indeed Ronald. A few days later, Ronald was arrested. His fingerprints were found inside the vehicle, and there were even witnesses that said that they had seen him in the area where he ditched the car. Phone records also pinged him in the area. Ronald confessed to the crime, although he claims that the gun accidentally went off and he didn't really mean to kill anybody. Then, things took a turn during the trial when he backtracked and denied everything and said that it was Donald instead. Ronald's attorney added that Ronald's fingerprints were only in the vehicle because he had helped Donald clean it. The jury didn't buy it, and Ronald was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Thanks for watching. What did you think of these twins that went wrong? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time.